Welcome. It's episode 169 of Grow Yourself Up. And today I want to talk about a topic that I've been wanting to talk about. I think every episode I cover a bit of ambivalence, but I want to talk specifically about ambivalence. So having mixed feelings in parenting and motherhood, and love and hate in parenthood and motherhood. And this is such a huge discussion, and it has the potential to bring up a lot. So I'm not going to be able to cover everything in this, but I want to sort of cover some key aspects and focus on how actually really embracing, allowing, and talking about our own mixed feelings, our own ambivalence, it frees us in some sense. It frees us to get support from our other adult people around us. It frees us to be more authentic with our children. And it kind of bursts that bubble of perfectionism of how we need to present as a mother, and really helps us welcome in all of us and all of our mixed reactions and our actual humanity, which is extremely hard if you've learned you need to be perfect or really good or just have palatable emotions as a child. So if in your own household you weren't allowed to have your anger, your boredom, your rage, your hate, any of that, then it's really difficult to allow yourself to have that about your children because of the construct of the mother-child relationship and because of how much we're responsible for, and because we brought them into the world. There's all those messages that we get in society. So I'm going to talk about all of these things, and I'm excited to get started with you. Ambivalence for me has always felt like too neutral a word. I know what it means. I know it means having varied emotions, having mixed, often opposing feelings, but just the word sounds too neat for me. And also it feels like the range in it is not big enough, because I feel like I swing between profound love and deep hate sometimes, a deep sense of, oh my word, my life has absolutely been ruined. Why did I do this? And I'm trying to be really honest here, even though I imagine, I don't know, like some people listening and thinking, oh my word, she must be a terrible mother if she sometimes hates them. And there's nothing I can do about that if people think that. But I do sometimes have deep feelings of hate, actually, and thinking this is, like lots of kind of aggressive thoughts about motherhood and about what have I done and everything. And I can even loop into thinking, oh my word, I shouldn't talk about that because I'm going to bring that upon myself. I'm going to make something terrible happen if I talk like that. That's magical thinking. That is some of my own wounded younger parts coming out. That's my own shame coming out. That's my own anxiety. But as an adult, I know that in all relationships, we have a massive amount of mixed feelings. And it is completely unsurprising that we would have this in the relationships which are literally the most demanding relationships we'll ever have. Like, of course, we would have mixed feelings in these relationships. So, yeah, I really want to kind of state that. There's a beautiful book on ambivalence called Torn in Two by a psychotherapist called Rozsika Parker. It's called the subtitle is The Experience of Maternal Ambivalence, Torn in Two, and it's a really wonderful book. I'm going to read some of it to you. But I want to kind of talk a bit about some of the things I'm going to kind of go through a few things. So for me, I've really had to acknowledge the huge swings I go through. So this feeling of profound love, so where there's so much meaning and beauty and I feel so much love, and then where I feel hate because I feel like I'm going to be crushed or overwhelmed, or as if there's this never-ending list of demands and that I might actually be crushed just by the sensory experience of motherhood. And that massive range is definitely trauma related, because that experience of having a narrow window of tolerance and then having a going in and out of hyper arousal and hypo-arousal means that we will have these kind of bigger swings because we ourselves are not well regulated. So as I have got more regulation on board, and as I have started to color in more of the mid-range of my nervous system experience, I feel I have less extremes of feeling. And sometimes I still have big extremes of feelings. And I want to kind of really name how we kind of judge ourselves around this. So this still happens when I have days where I'm like, oh my word, I don't think I can cope with this. Or I feel like hate, or I feel really overwhelmed by all the requests and constant questions, because my girls are, they're quite like me, to be honest. And I ask a lot of questions, and I'm like, can be quite intense. And they both like to ask a lot of questions. They like to understand a lot of things. And they also fight with each other quite a lot. So if the one is dominating a lot of my attention, the other one wants to dominate my attention just because she's incompetent with her sister. So that adds another sort of layer of just intensity, basically. And sometimes, like today, let me give you an example. So today actually is a day, it's fitting that I'm recording this on a day about ambivalence, because it's the first day of my period. And I went swimming with my kids yesterday, and we're trying out a new gym, because we stopped our one gym membership last year, and I want to take them back to somewhere swimming. So we went to this gym, and I took them both to the change room afterwards. And I find taking them to the change rooms very intense, because they need some help with various aspects of the showering. One of them gets very anxious and wants to be quite close to me, and one of them doesn't like being in small spaces, so it doesn't like being in little change rooms, and also gets stressed and wants to know what I'm doing. So I helped them both. They each took their own showers, and I helped them with the process of like rinsing their costumes. The one costume they've got is really hard to pull off over their head, because it's like a two-piece. So I helped them pull it off over their heads, and then they washed themselves in the shower and everything. And I took them where they could get dressed and everything. And then it was like a big family change room in this place, but it was different to the previous gym because it was darker and sort of more like small, even though this was kind of a big change room. And I really felt kind of overstimulated, because they were both like, I don't know, just like chipping it away at each other and starting to fight. And I had to help them with various different tasks, and things like not like dumping the towel on the floor that you then need to dry your body with. And that's my own OCD, and like being very fastidious about that sort of stuff. So I was helping them not to kind of do that, because I'd bought extra towels so that they could stand on a towel. And you can hear that I'm quite kind of particular. Anyway, and then I said, okay, here's a snack. I bought them a snack. I'm going to go and have a shower. And then within the first minute I had got in the shower, coming over to me, when are you getting out? How much longer are you going to be? And then the next thing started, which was that the one wanted to go into somewhere else away from her sister, but her sister felt anxious and wanted to keep that other one, the other twin, in the like change room with her, because she didn't want her to go away because she felt stressed and anxious. But the one who wanted to get away and go into somewhere else in the change room didn't like to be in a small space. So then they keep on bringing me this fight. And then when I did get out the shower, the one twin was giving the other twin, like basically the Heimlich maneuver, squeezing her, because she felt so frustrated that her sister had tried to keep on keeping her in this small space, basically. And I was just like, oh my word, get out of my face. Let me just get dressed. Stop crowding me. And my own sensory, if you listen to the episode from last week, my own sensory kind of kind of challenges came up where I just wanted to have some quiet and not have everyone like on top of me and around me and pestering me with lots and lots of questions. And I also started to get hot because it felt like we were like the hottest change room ever, which we probably weren't, but they were also fighting. And so I had to kind of remind them both that this was an FFT, and actually one of them reminded me it was an FFT, but just to say, okay, let me just get changed. You go and sit over there. You go and blow dry your hair, and you just can stay with me if you're feeling stressed. The one who felt stressed about not wanting to her sister go away from her then sat with me. But even as she was sitting with me, she was like buzzing around me instead of just sitting in the corner and just letting me get dressed. And so I could feel my own interoception, like sending me these stress signals of, you're too close to me, you're asking too many questions. I need to just have the chance to dry myself, put some cream on my legs, put my clothes on, put some deodorant on. Just let me do that. I don't even have to brush my hair. I walked out of there with like my hair all over the place. But I started to get really, and they were then starting to fight again, because I had got cross with the one for like basically giving that, well, she didn't do the hammock move, but she basically did it on her stomach. So she was like, she really hurt her, like did it from behind. And so I was just like, okay, just give me a few minutes so I can get dressed and we'll get out of here. But in that sort of intensity, up comes for me like some sort of sensory rage where I'm like, can you just keep your hands off each other for like 2 seconds and let me get dressed? And like hate comes up for me. I started to get really like, oh my word, I'm never coming again swimming with you, or you are never going to be in the change room with me. Like all this very dramatic thoughts. Now, as soon as I start to have those type of thoughts, I then often tip into a place of, oh my word, I'm terrible, I'm the worst mother, like all of these type of thoughts, because of the intensity of this experience and everything. And I want you to notice, do you do that too? If you're having like an intense, tricky experience, or there's a lot of stimulation for you and you're starting to feel kind of overwhelmed, and then you're going to get maybe snappy or whatever's going on for you, do you then tip into a lot of self-criticism and saying you're a terrible mother, or that, like any like amount of self-criticism or shame, saying you're awful? So just park that and notice, do you do that? Now, I also have times in mothering when I feel so profoundly grateful that I got to be a mother. I'm an old mother. Well, I was classed as a geriatric mother. I turned 50 this year, and my twins turned 10. So I had them when I was 40, just after I turned 40. And I'm like so profoundly grateful that the universe gave them to me, that I got 2 at the same time, actually, because I don't know if I would have gone through another pregnancy. I like look into their eyes and I actually can see the divine. They've got these beautiful sparkling, both of them. I've got green eyes, my husband's got brown eyes, and they've got like these hazel eyes. They've got these beautiful eyes, the most beautiful energy. They're so enthusiastic and joyful. And sometimes I'm like the luckiest person in the whole wide world. And I got these extremely joyful, enthusiastic children. And sometimes I can see, like when I'm hugging them or when we're sitting on the sofa, and like one of them sits next to me, and then sometimes they sit on my lap or like between my legs and lean back on me. And it's just like so profoundly cozy. And I just feel like so grateful that there's so much love and so much beauty. And in those moments, I never then think to myself, oh, wow, I'm a sensational mother. Oh, wow, I'm the most loving mother. Oh, wow, this is fantastic. I just think, oh, I'm so lucky, or I'm so grateful, or this is so beautiful. I never go on then to like really make up stories about myself as a mother because my feelings are, in inverted commas, positive. I never do that. I just like savor the beauty in the moment. I savor the love. I savor the gratitude. I savor the contentment. I savor the connection. I savor that feeling of hugging their little bodies. But I never abstract to or make a leap to telling stories about myself as a mother. So why, when we are having feelings of hate or feelings of boredom or feelings of overwhelm why do we then jump to the story of I'm a shit mother? Like it doesn't, why do we do that? And I mean, there's many reasons that we do that, because we've got we've got a lot of shame. We've got anxiety. We're constantly scanning for what might make us unacceptable. And a lot of the research on perfectionism shows that one of the main contributors to it is not having our own negative affect held as a child. So, i.e., when we would cry or be bored or be angry or be kind of disagreeable in any way as a child, or as a baby, if we were then kind of ignored, punished, berated, so our negative affect was not allowed in the attachment relationship, or it severed that relationship. That's one of the contributors to perfectionism. So I suspect that it is hard for us to hold our own hate because it feels so threatening and that it might rupture relationship. That's what I think. So, but I really want you to ponder that. Like, do you ever, when you're having, because there's a lot of beauty in motherhood, I bet that you probably have more beauty in connection than actually terrible experiences, but because the days which are really terrible and where everything goes to hell are so kind of deep in terms of what they carve into our psyche, they feel much more pronounced. But I really want to challenge you to look at your own stories about yourself and try and come up with a more kind of balanced perspective, because I bet there's also a lot of beauty alongside times when you feel like, oh, I hate this, or this is terrible, or I feel really overwhelmed. I hope that makes sense. And I think it's also really important I think it's very important to own our mixed feelings, because for multiple different reasons. So why am I encouraging you to own the mixed feelings that you might have and to talk about it to people who can actually understand? First of all, when we can be coherent in our own expression and coherent in our emotional presence and our energy field, we don't find the need to be passive aggressive. If you are trying to deny that you find things difficult, or deny that you find feeling very overwhelmed, you're going to be smiling through gritted teeth, or being really passive aggressive in your comments, or being very snarky in your comments, or being really undercutting. It's going to come out somehow. So owning what feels difficult for us is really, really important, just for our own health, basically, in terms of, an expression of sort of like coherence, literal coherence, where what we feel internally is conveyed externally. Now, I'm not saying when you are having these moments that you should go and say, oh, I hate you, I hate you. I'm saying that acknowledging that to yourself might mean that you need to really take time for yourself, that you might need some time alone, that you might need to really meet your needs, that you might need to say, you're going to have to watch TV for a while because I need to go and have a cup of tea, or I need to go and have a shower and I just need some space. In my own marriage, I have found it really helpful to be really honest with my husband. So I think for a long time, I projected onto him, oh, you are much calmer than me. You don't have so many mixed feelings. Therefore, you are better than me. You seem to be able to cope with challenge, and you seem very even-tempered. And I remember we were on a holiday and we went to Suffolk, and we were on a beach in Suffolk. And I said to him, something about, I think I asked him directly, I was like, I can't remember, but I wanted to know specifically about his own emotional experience of parenting and how he held his mixed feelings. Like, did he have his mixed feelings? Why did he not talk about them as much as me now? Because he is more avoidant in his emotional presentation than me. And he said, and this is a term that specifically applies to men, and I don't like this term, but I'm going to say what he said. He said, parenting is a real ball ache. I hope you understand what that means. But, and we then proceeded to have a much longer discussion about it, but it made me feel so much better about things to really discuss like the depth of our mixed feelings, and also acknowledge, of course, how much we love our children, that, about how much it has radically altered our whole life forever. And to really be realistic about what that means because of the demands on us, how that's altered our time, how that's altered our identity, how it's altered our relationship, how it's altered our mornings, how it's altered our nights, how it's altered every single meal we'll probably ever have in the whole wide world. And really, like, acknowledging that in the context of our marriage meant that we can be really supportive to each other. We can notice when the other one is getting really like ratty and tired and grumpy, or if they're starting to shout, and offer support instead of criticizing each other, and come in as like a backup, so that not so that we can provide perfect parenting, but so that we can support each other and hold that authenticity. And for something that's really important for me is that we can hold that at the adult level instead of putting that onto our children. It's not their job, in my view, to deal with our ambivalence or our struggles, or to bear the brunt of our adult decisions. It is our job to deal with that. But we can't deal with that if we're not being honest about our own emotional experience. So I have found that really helpful to just kind of talk about that. Equally, I have watched my husband grow so much in the way that he expresses love. And I can see when he looks at our daughters, how much he loves them and how proud he is of them. And that is like deeply beautiful. And so he has been, because he also had emotional neglect. And so he has learned about love and the expression of love. And that is the great beauty of children, or one of the great beauties. Okay, I want to, so I think that, and actually, let me finish this bit. Why it is so helpful to be honest and to kind of share what's going on is because it then frees you. It frees you to be in the moment with each other, to find humor. It resources you, actually, because once you've talked about that, it kind of clears the air and you can acknowledge how hard things are. And then you can maybe give each other a 2-hour break here, or this one takes them out, or you can together watch something as a family on TV and not have such high expectations about how things need to look. And it's really very, it kind of loosens something when we are trying to defend against something massively. Like if, for example, you are trying to pretend everything is always wonderful and that you don't have any struggles. That's a huge, and if that is not the case, it's a huge, huge burden on you to try and keep on pretending that, or to try and keep on crafting that. It is so much easier to just acknowledge what is going on, and so much more freeing. And I find that I can really see how that has played out. And there's lots of kind of talking in this book, Torn in Two, in chapter 3, which is called The Unacceptable Face of Ambivalence. This author, Rozsika Parker, shares a lovely story about a couple who wrote an article, or who contributed to an article in Marie Claire. And they reflect on how freeing it was for them. So I really suggest you get this book and have a read of it. Okay, so I think that there's also might be some specific. This book really traces a lot of stuff historically. It talks about the various different sociological things. It talks about how motherhood has been cast historically, and the role of the mother, and how much the mother is both given so much power and also expected to know how to do things and just to like mother naturally. And a lot of that stuff is really, really problematic. I'm not going to go into all of that now, but I think that modern motherhood has got an extra layer of intensity around why I sometimes feel like, do I experience more ambivalence or mixed feelings than my mother may have? And my mother was dead long before I became a mother, so I've never been able to talk about this to her. But there's so much pressure in modern motherhood because we are trying to deliver so much alone in our nuclear families. So things like moving away from family, globalization, and the ease of travel, those have really contributed to the fact that many of us exist away from the place where we grew up, the communities we grew up in, and our family of origin and our wider family. So it is much more complicated also when there's trauma, because you may have wanted to move to get away from your family. I think that I certainly, in 12-step fellowships, they talk about doing a geographical. So like if you're an alcoholic and you think, oh, well, if I move countries, maybe I won't have that problem anymore. But that's just doing a geographical, because we take ourselves with us. So I think that I did a geographical. I moved from South Africa to London to get away from some of the stuff of my own childhood. But with that has meant that I've lost the whole network of people I grew up with. I've got a very wide group of cousins. I had I had like 11 first cousins on my dad's side, which is a beautiful community. It is more scattered now, but most of them still live in South Africa. And so I missed out on that. And that's, I feel really sad about that. And then there's communities of people that I just grew up with, in terms of, like people who lived down the street from you, or teachers from the school that you went to, or like the dermatologist that you went to as a child, or lots of things. I mean, I don't know. I didn't really go to the dermatologist as a child, to be honest, but networks of people in the place you grew up with who are maybe like fourth level acquaintances, but they still know you and they still know of your family, and that there's that level of comfort. Whereas when you relocate, you just do not have that. So it's a massive amount of loss involved in relocating. And also moving away from extended family. We used to historically, in like the arc of time with humanity, be much more, there was much more shared parenting. There's a term called allo parenting, where parenting was offered more by children, actually, so older children and other people within the family. And I have often thought about how it would be so amazing to live in intergenerational houses, provided you got on with the multiple generations, because of the kind of relational support. Because when you're living in a nuclear family, there's so much pressure that falls on these two parents in terms of providing for the children. And modern parenting is also there's also this added pressure because of like all the stuff that we know about child development. If you're a perfectionist as well, you'll bring your own unique lens of wanting to be the cycle-breaking perfectionist, wanting to provide a different environment for your children. And so there's just multiple layers of pressure, which means that it might feel more unacceptable to have ambivalence, and yet we may have more ambivalence because the huge amount of pressure that is placed on us, if that makes sense. So we might have more dramatic swings in our feelings because of trauma. We've got that narrow window of tolerance. We might have more shame, more anxiety, and therefore feel more like we hate the whole situation, but less likely to allow ourselves to acknowledge that or feel more shame for having that sense. So there's so much complexity, but I really want to kind of ask you, first of all, to notice, do you criticize yourself continuously when you have negative feelings about your children or your role as a mother or a father? And do you celebrate yourself when you have positive experiences or positive feelings? I bet you only do the former. So I bet you just relentlessly criticize yourself when you have those experiences. Do you talk to people about these mixed feelings? Do you kind of own it? Do you find some humor in it? Do you notice that it's not all the time? Or do you just kind of castigate yourself continuously? Because I really want to invite you into knowing that, if you think about all the relationships in your life, even with people that you really love, like I sometimes feel hate towards my husband, and I love him deeply. I love him deeply, deeply. I'm so grateful and happy that we met. And I'm so happy to be, that he's in my life. And sometimes he drives me mad. Or like he does things and I'm just like, oh my word, why are you doing that? And I feel like intense hate, or like annoyance. But that's just like a fleeting thing that happens. And I don't like criticize myself and interrogate that as much, because I think that the mother-child relationship is particularly, we're particularly vulnerable here to really criticizing ourselves because of how much we're responsible for, because we are totally responsible for our children. They're very vulnerable to us. So there is like emotional complexity here where it feels, it feels hard to acknowledge this, but because of the intensity of it, we're also much more likely to feel that. Feel that huge range of mixed feelings. And so, like, I consider that in all relationships, there will be rupture. And in all relationships, there's a massive range of feelings. But if emotional neglect is at the heart of your story, allowing yourself this range of feelings may in itself feel threatening. So you may yourself feel really threatened by negative feelings you might have towards your children. You might think that makes you bad. That doesn't make you bad. It just means you're a complex human with a lot of mixed emotions, which is allowed. But you may be coloring in your own emotional landscape at the same time as you're raising your children. Okay, so I just want to say, I'm just going to read you a bit from Rozsika Parker's book. So this is from the chapter, The Unacceptable Face of Ambivalence. So she said, ambivalence is emotionally difficult to believe in, even if intellectually many people recognize its inevitability. Accepting that hatred, resentment, and hostility are unavoidable components of the full range of feelings for a child throws doubt, as I've said, on the reality of a mother's capacity for love in both her own and others' eyes. So we ourselves doubt ourselves, and then in society we think, oh no, this is not allowed. And we really have to kind of allow this complexity. Mothers are full human beings. We're not stone saints who only have like calm, like loving feelings. We're just not that. And it's a relief to own all of our humanness. So I want to encourage you to own your own humanness. Because she talks about thinking the unthinkable. Once we've done that, we can kind of move past it. We don't have to maintain that huge defense that I talked about, how energetically draining that is. I'm going to read you. She writes really beautifully about the resistance to thinking about ambivalence in society. And so I really want to encourage you to think about your own ambivalence, think about your own mixed feelings. Now I'm just want to read you something. I'm just turning the pages. I was making some notes earlier. She talks a lot about Winnie Cath. There's like some really beautiful, interesting stuff. And I specifically want to talk about when we haven't had what we might consider a good experience of mothering. So this is something else I'm going to say about from Rozsika Parker. She says, while acknowledging the impact of her own mothering on a mother, I do not believe it determines in any straightforward way the nature of her mothering. The notion that the recipient of real and recognizable bad mothering will inevitably repeat the pattern with her own children is, in my view, a punitive and pessimistic understanding of motherings. Yes, her feelings towards her mother and towards her infant self will inflict a woman's mothering, but not in any predictive fashion. A whole clutch of circumstances, in fact, combine to affect a woman's response to mothering, ranging from her unconscious processes, her physical health, her economic, social, and family situation, the availability of emotional support, and of course, the specific psychological contributions of her own children. So I would add in there neurodivergence, sensory experience, the ability to ask for help, so to allow yourself to ask for help, to allow yourself to be supported. I would add in there trauma background, trauma adaptations, how much you dissociate, how much your own, like how much you're at home with allowing your own humanity, all of that will massively affect the response to mothering. Whether you've had, what your friendship group is like, if other people are show you what it is to feel ambivalence and to allow that, then that'll be much more normalized in your circle. So kind of notice those factors for you, because if you exist in a group of friends who have had like babies who slept through the night from the word go, or had very easy breastfeeding journeys, and you've had a completely different experience with a complicated breastfeeding journey and the baby never sleeps, then of course you're going to have more ambivalence because you've had much more challenge, and you might feel much less likely to allow it because no one else in your group is allowing that. I actually remember in my, I had a group, I didn't do NCT, but I did some other, so NCT is something in the UK called the National Childcare Trust, where they offer a lot of antenatal classes, which are kind of completely focused on birth and feeding, and nothing about like what happens afterwards and kind of the massive emotional journey of parenting. But anyway, I did some with another group, and I remember going out for dinner with some of the girls or the women afterwards. And I think that I said, "Do you ever hate your children?" And the two people looked at me as if like, "Oh my word, are you like off your rocker?" And so then I never really talked about that again with them. But it's something about choosing your audience, I guess, and noticing, can your own psychological complexity be held? It might be something to take to therapy. So I'm not going to read more from this now, but in this particular chapter, the author goes on to compare the experiences of a woman who had very good and loving memories of her mother, and then two other women whose memories are of critical, angry, and unforgiving and ungiving mothers. And both of them, like all of them, had complexity in terms of how they dealt with how they felt about their children. The one who had a very loving mother and had very good memories had unconscious processes, which meant that what she wanted from her children was her mother. So she wanted to be really loved by her children. She wanted to be really gratified and be emotionally fed by her children. That was her unconscious processes. So she was really trying to get something from them, which I would suggest she probably needs to get more met by adults, and kind of really learn to give some of that to herself, because that sets us up for feeling really depleted and resentful often. And there's something about it, can we really focus on our own needs? Because a lot of this is about, have we met our own needs? Do we have our own needs for connection met? Are we being seen within the context of our relationship? If we're in a relationship, are we allowing ourselves to feed ourselves? Are we being very self-sacrificing? Because if we're being self-sacrificing, we're more likely to feel resentful. Some people report feeling very, finding parenting a baby very, very gratifying, because it's relatively easier to meet a baby's needs. If you have a very like satisfying breastfeeding journey, and if they sleep well, or you're happy to always do contact naps, it's easier. Babies don't talk back. Babies are generally quieter than older children. And this one mother who had tricky memories of her own mothering experience, and she felt her mother was ungiving and critical of her. And her name, I'm going to read something, but her name was Naomi, and she now talks about her older children and how she feels that the demands of her older children completely outstrip her capacity to answer them. And this is her sort of what she writes: "I can't bear the endless demands, the sense of there being nothing good enough, the impression of a bottomless pit. I feel that I'm going to be devoured, that there will be absolutely nothing left in me. Jonathan is now 8 and Leah is 6. I scream and shout at them in what seems like an awful confirmation of actually being like my mother. At times I feel she is encapsulated around me, that I'm actually enveloped by her. She'd throw things and scream and shout, and now I do." And now, so it feels like for this mother that her own mother is coming out of her mouth. And So there's so much, like our own unconscious processes, what we are projecting onto our children in terms of what they can deliver for us, what our desires are, if we're hoping that they will complete us, all of those really complex things, which often need to be worked through in therapy, are in the mix. And so this has just been like a really kind of small taster on ambivalence and love and hate. I suggest this is a lovely book to read. There are some other books, and I'm going to put some of them. I'll put this one into the show notes, and I'm going to think about other things that I might recommend to you. But, many of you listening will be mothering after not having an experience of not sufficient mothering. So, Clarissa Pinkola Estes has a term called undermothered. Most of us who are here have been undermothered. We didn't really get our needs met. We might have been parentified. Whatever reason, we didn't get sort of sufficient, good enough mothering. So you're already, and the heart of many of the experiences here is emotional neglect. So you're already trying to do something from a position of kind of lack, because you don't have this model of sufficient, good enough mothering, and you don't have a very detailed emotional landscape because of the emotional neglect. So be really gentle with yourself. The whole point this podcast is called Grow Yourself Up is because we're growing ourselves up as we're parents. So you're coloring in that emotional landscape. You're welcoming in your own humanity, healing shame, healing anxiety, and really taking responsibility for yourself at an adult level. And that means there's a messy emotional complexity there. So I hope that this has been supportive, and I send lots of love out to you. And just next time that you start going into this thing about being a really shit mother, notice, do you call yourself like the most amazing, sensational mother and those moments of great connection? Just because you're having feelings that are mixed or moments of boredom or anger doesn't mean you're shit. Don't make up stories about the nature of what you are or how you are as a mother based on your feelings. Feelings come and go. Emotions come and go. You don't have to magnify all the negative ones. You can notice what they're trying to tell you. Be emotionally coherent. Have a coherent energy field. Notice what they're trying to tell you. They're probably calling out for you to get some of your needs met. You might need to commiserate with your partner or commiserate with your friends and laugh about how hard things are, or get some help to alleviate how hard things are, or explain how you find some sensory challenges. Like, I think that I will send my girls, and maybe they can get changed with their dad. Maybe there's like a family section that they can go there so that I don't have to have these overwhelming sensory experiences in the pool all the time. Or maybe that was just the FFT of this new gym that I shared about with you, and that maybe the next time we go, we'll have a much smoother process. I will certainly know what to expect, and they will too. So part of this is also kind of growing that window of tolerance and that sort of adult self, which is like, okay, this is the first time. It's not the end of the world. We don't have to make this all a massive drama. And I mean, I have to do that with myself, like to sort of say, this doesn't mean we shouldn't join. It was okay. We survived. Okay. Anyway, I'm sending you lots of love. There was a lot of honesty in this, and I hope it was okay for you. Okay, take really good care. Bye.